Hi everyone. It's March 1st. I can't believe it already. Just a little recap. I'm doing Beata Hospice for my internship, and I do a lot of home visits, connecting with the patients that we're serving and their families, making sure they have the right supports, and if they don't, what they need to get those supports. Um, this week, I wanted to talk about relationships and kind of more around the boundaries of not just the people we are working with, but also um, the patients. So, in we go every other week, we go to an IGG meeting where we go over the cases and we review um, any patients that need extra support or what the nurses hear compared to the social workers or the spiritual counselors or even just the front office gets phone calls. So something I was noticing and actually talked to one of my coworkers of a social worker. There's a nurse in her that have been bumping heads for some reason. We can't figure out really why. The social worker, her name is Emma, and she does a great job just kind of letting the lady vent in IDG if she's seeing something that she doesn't like with the social workers in the homes with the patients. Um, but I feel like the way that the nurse voices her opinion is really not appropriate for the IDG meetings. We're there to make sure that we're practicing the right things to support the patients and the families, not to vent about their personal beliefs. Um, I guess this all stirred up from one home. There was a patient that doesn't want a social worker, doesn't want a spiritual counselor. That's normal. Some people decline it, and they're totally allowed to. When we were talking about if there's any way we can get them back in and have them that support there for them because it's there. The nurse was very adamant that nope, it's not just social worker. It's Emma. They don't like her because she's too strong and comes off really strong and blah, 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 went off on a tangent. Her supervisor did a great job ending that conversation, but I know that wasn't right because I work with Emma, the social worker, and she's very calm, collective, and does a great job listening. So I don't really know what that was about, but it keeps happening. So I think relationships and finding that boundary of your beliefs of what a patient needs or a consumer, anyone that we're working with, compared to your coworkers is something that I think needs to be talked about if there's an issue privately, but not in those big meetings. And I bet a lot of you feel the same way. And I can see that sometimes it's hard to hold back when you really build a bond with someone and you see that they really don't like a certain team member joining in. But that's the best part about this Beata Hospice is that people can decline certain people visiting. So like the social workers and spiritual counselors, or they can say, yes, I 100% want them and I want volunteers. And they can decline nursing coming all the time or just coming for short, brief visits. So I think that part of relationships is really important, and I'm really seeing how where to hold back my own beliefs in saying something because I've definitely wanted to speak up and say, hey, that I don't believe you. I've worked with her, and she's not a strong-headed social worker. She's very calm, collective, and quiet. So that was difficult at first when I was hearing because you start building relationships and you want everyone to get along. So that's about the relationships of coworkers. I also wanted to talk about relationships with patients and their families. We're in a community where I'm in a rural community where everyone knows everyone, and that kind of came up with a family I was visiting. The mother was passing away, and the son worked at a college that I used to go to, and I should have not connected. Should have just said that, hey, oh, I know that school, and says, hey, I graduated from there. Because then once I said that, he went off and wanted to know more personal details about my life, and that put me in a position where I didn't mind telling him, but I knew it wasn't appropriate at that point. Like we were there to support him and his family, his mother, not to talk about my personal life. So finding that boundary is definitely new. I've learned that talking about dogs is the easiest thing. I have a puppy, and I don't mind talking about the dogs, and most people don't mind either. Um, so that always is an open barrier that is somewhat personal, but it's easier to talk about and redirect around without saying my address, how many kids I have, if I don't have any kids, but if I had kids, or if I'm married, all of those more personal, who's my family kind of questions. So relationships is something I'm definitely looking and learning from my coworkers and the people I'm supporting, and really making sure that I learn from it and know that when is a good time to talk about personal beliefs and about myself when I'm doing the internship. So hopefully you guys are going through the same thing and you're learning a lot about it too. Um, guys have any tips of redirecting around people asking personal questions? That would be great. I'd love feedback. Thanks. Have a great week, everyone.